All right.
All right, let's do it.
Let's do it.
Cool.
Welcome to the premiere Aaron Holstein Vibesquad recordings podcast with my very first guest, Mr. Bill.
What's up?
We were having a very interesting conversation in the car on the way and all about music life. So I'll try to just drop us right back in where we left off without too much.
Oh, I remember where we were.
Yeah.
I was telling the story about how I played in Nashville, Tennessee
Okay.
at Creatures of the Night after G. Jones to 1,500 people in a tent, and then directly after he finished and I started, 1,400 people left, and there was just 100 people left in the crowd, and I felt really shitty about it. And we were talking also about just some nightmare stories, and then you were like, yes, I've had an experience like that, so I need to hear that experience.
Well, we might as well just start right off with the horror stories from the road.
Yeah.
Because that's always fun. Everyone loves to hear tour stories. I have a lot of them.
Yeah, no shit.
But definitely know that I like that feeling of having everyone leave. Like I actually have a recurring nightmare, like every single night, that I was setting up in front of a huge crowd. Like I think I was opening for someone big, like, I don't know, Pretty Lights or Bass Nectar or something like that. So there was already a crowd and I couldn't get the gear plugged in and the sound on through the whole set, and I'm losing people. And then somehow it's like the festival's over and I'm still looking for like an RCA cable and I'm down and I know I'm missing it and it's all it's fleeting. I kind of sand in the hourglass, and I had this anxiety and it would just wake me up every night. Same kind of horror. And it was like the worst of the, it didn't even matter, but I'd get myself really worked up, you know, because that happens to me so many times. I mean, I remember up in Canada at a snowblower festival in, where is that? Like Calgary, really cold in January, like freezing. But they have, like, the whole town comes out because they have a free show, and it's put on by like the Shambhala PK sound guys, you know, so it's like really good DJ talent and great sound system. And so like all of Calgary is like downtown Calgary in the park in this place. Really cool. You can see the town. It's awesome. It's freezing, but that's the whole, that's the appeal of it, I guess. And so you play in your coat and you know, you see your breath, everything. So I'm playing up there and the set was going killer. The sound was amazing. And I did some sort of like a drop build up. And as the thing was supposed to come down on the one, the power just cut out.
Oh, no.
And for the city.
Oh, wow.
And just sort of stood there. And everybody in the crowd was like, got really cold, you know, like it just instantly we went from being this cool thing that was happening to like this horrible, like, what are we doing here thing? And like, I know it lasted at least 5 minutes, but for me, it felt like 40 minutes. And I'm looking at them. I'm like, do I get my time back? They're like, no, you got to just finish up.
Oh, shit.
And when we get this back on, well, it turns out that the guy who was in charge of the city power was like, had nodded off in this little stone, like the powerhouse where he was supposed to be manning this stuff. The guy was sleeping. So they couldn't even find where that was. And when they found it, he had crashed and didn't notice that the whole grid was off. And
so he just had to flick a
flicked the switch and it came back on.
Oh, wow, okay.
And I started up and like one tune in and they're like, you gotta go, you know, and 10A's up next, you know, or whatever. And I was just like, I don't know. I just remember feeling I was so cold.
Yeah.
And that just was like such a raw.
But you can't blame that on yourself though, because the power just went out. So like that's a different thing, I think.
Well,
you are like there, the center of attention. And,
yeah, you still die the same death, I feel like. I mean, there's plenty of them where I think I definitely turned the crowd off or whatever, and it was me. Like, for the beginning bunch of Vibesquad dates, you know, once I got out of my comfort zone of playing like West Coast parties, Burning Man type parties, people that like knew the context of the music that I was listening to, they got into it, and that was actually pretty easy. But touring around like the Midwest and the East Coast, there was an expectation or not. People didn't know what to expect, and I would play some strange parties and be told like, "Will you play something good? You know, or play something funky."
Yeah.
which I thought was weird because like I was, considered like that. My stuff, like the funk part of it was turned up, a lot, but I would have people that just whatever they wanted to dance to in their head, I wasn't it. And I'd always have like, there'd be like a girl on this side of the stage being like, can you play something good? Like house, this isn't like, whatever. Like my stuff was just the wrong.
They don't understand that like you're booked there to do your thing.
Right. That I made. I've constantly had to tell people that I made all this music. Like even the last 3 gigs of my Vibesquad career, like at one of them up in Minneapolis, some guy was standing behind me, the booth they had at the club, you could actually reach the performer. He's tapping me. Hey, would you play some hip hop? Some good hip hop? And he's like, wants just radio hip hop tunes. And like, I had to have him bounced.
Wow.
And like, that happens to me. That was like story of my life to have just some person that like sneaks,
tapping you mid-performance.
Constantly sneaking in
It's ridiculous.
to the stage area with, past the bouncers and bugging me, you know? And they seemed like they would just put their hooks into me. And like, that reminded me of one more, I mean, there's oftentimes I got somebody in the booth that I need to have ejected and I'm too nice of a guy to, and I'm too busy and I'm trying to like concentrate. So that gets under my skin. And I remember the story, it was with Anacia and I think I was going before her and there's a guy in the front row and he just starts with the, you suck.
Oh shit. That's never good.
You suck. And he's really getting into it. And he's like yelling, he's like right in front of me and he's totally yelling at me. I'm going to get the fuck out of here. I'm going to kick your ass.
What do you think? Like, what time are you playing? Like 8 p.m. or something? 9 p.m.?
No, I say I was on at like 10:30 and she was going to be the midnight. And this guy, I don't know.
Was it in a club?
In a club.
What kind of a day do you think that guy had before doing that?
Well, it was one of those times where I feel like, people on the internet can just talk shit and be a troll. And they forget when they're drunk out in public that they can't just troll like actively. And, like, I'm right here, dude. Like, you got to stop. And he's like, there's a lot of silence in my tunes for a second. And I'm just hearing like, fuck you from this guy. Like, and it was so super intense, And so I didn't know what to do. Like, I'm starting to think, okay, this guy's going to start a fight with me. Like, he's totally he's building. It's like he's threatening me, He wants me off the stage and he's had it with me. And I'm like, that's all I can hear. So I imagine everyone hates me. And I don't know how many of his friends are on his team or whether everyone, if I called him out, if he would just be, humiliated and stop. Yeah. But I didn't want to like run the risk. But I'm already thinking like, if he comes up here, I could grab that like round bass mic stand and just butt him right in the, I'm like imagining that. I'm like, well, that's really not going to go well. Yeah. And so that all the thought processes happened. But then I look down the stage and there's a bouncer just really bored sitting there, just not even looking at the situation. And I run over really quick and I'm like, hey, there's a guy over there who's threatening to kick my ass. Is there anything you can do? And he's like, yeah, like that's what I'm here for. And it was really strange because then I'm playing and he walks around behind the dude, and he's standing right next to the guy and he gets his attention. And the guy looks up at the bouncer and the bouncer looks at me and he goes, is this the guy? And I look at the guy and he looks at the, it's like, you could absolutely see what's going on. I'm like, that's the guy. And the guy's like, what, am I getting kicked out? And he's like, you're getting kicked out. And he boosts him, Oh. And then I'm just imagining he was the kind of guy that would just hang around all night. So it's still in my head. Yeah. And are his friends like, what's the deal with that? And so that got me spooked. And like, I couldn't get my vibe back for the rest of the set.
You know what I do?
I just want to crawl away.
Yeah. What I do when stuff like that happens, and it's only, I think, it's actually happened a few times, but it's never been so like, I think because I'm just a big dude, like I'm not an aggressive dude, but because I'm a big dude, people generally don't try to fight me. Right. But like, but I have had experiences where I've seen people in crowds and been like, if I was a smaller dude, that guy would probably try and fight me. And people who are definitely saying shit like, oh, just like I'll stop the music sometimes and just say like, hey, I hope you're having a good night. This is all my music and whatever, like try to just like engage with the crowd on somewhat of a personal level, like hey, I'm an actual person, I'm not just a sound, like I actually am a dude who does this, right? And try to engage them in that way. And a lot of the times when I do that, or not a lot of the times, but sometimes there'll be some person who's just like, oh, you know, you're an asshole, stop talking and just keep playing music. And it's like, I'll generally try to engage in a way where I'm like, well, actually I'm a person who's like trying to just connect with you on some level, and you're being an asshole right now. And I'll usually just engage them mid-set. Like, just
I think that's the way to go. I mean, that's definitely
so if I was
the
in
lesson for that guy, you know?
Yeah, if I was in your position, I probably would have just stopped the music and been like, hey, you're an asshole. Like, you should probably just leave. Everyone here thinks you're an asshole. And like,
Of course, I wish I did.
Yeah.
But, you know, exactly, I'm 5'7".
Yeah.
And this was like a big bro,
Yeah.
like all drunk and like ready to go. And
Yeah.
I got on the stage to play music. So in my head was like, man, I'm just not in the mood for whatever happens if this escalates.
Yeah.
And his guy has no filter. Like, he'll take it. Like, obviously, he wants to take it somewhere, you know? And so I tried to imagine what the pro way to deal with it. But I've seen, you know, comedians deal with hecklers in such effective ways by calling them out and getting the rest of the audience to make them feel stupid in an elegant way.
A lot of power, even just having the louder voice. Like, you have the microphone, they can't respond. So like, you just can say whatever you want, and it's literally like a YouTube comment. It's like, you can just say whatever you want to this guy. His response has no effect because nobody can hear him. So you just like basically say what you feel, and then everybody just agrees with you because there's no retort. So
I wish I did. I wrote a million regrets too, you know, like a million of those stories, and a million like wish what I had handled myself better.
I mean, I think it's fine to tell a bouncer to get rid of him. Like, it seems like a dick move on his part, and it seems like you did the sensible thing. So
yeah, but it was like one of those things where it's crazy how far under your skin that energy you'll get. Because I mean, you're already out there like trying to play your original ideas for people. And
which can be nerve-wracking anyway, and to have somebody just there doing that sort of shit doesn't make you feel any better about the situation.
Exactly. Yeah. And you know, do you get stage fright?
It depends. If I'm doing a Mr. Bill DJ set, and I'm either like headlining or supporting, then generally I won't. It really depends. Like, if I'm playing a big festival and I don't think many people there know me, then I will, because I'll like, I get stage frighting, like, not in general. I get it like usually due to some logic in my head. So
like some importance level of the gig or something.
Yeah, something like that. Like, if I was playing before Bass Nectar to 10,000 people, I'd probably get stage fright. But if I'm, you know, this show at the Black Box, I mean, there's always a minimum amount of stage fright that you get. I think, you know, even if it's just, you know, you're going to nail it, and you know that everybody there loves you and is there to see you and stuff, there's still a little bit, but it's very much lessened than if you're playing, you know, before G Jones at a G Jones headline show or something like that, where you know people are there for the headliner, and you know people generally gonna have that attitude like, you are just an object in between me and the headliner right now. It's like, no, actually I'm a real human being trying to do something also. Yeah,
the opening gig is a strange beast.
But it's so necessary, like you're saying before with the touring. We were talking in the car about, I was talking about how I bit off more than I could chew with that show with the visuals, and to contextualize it for people listening, I basically did a 35 show tour with circuit bands. So I brought my friend from Australia to have my own support act.
Both of the circuit band guys, or are they just one guy now?
It's two guys, but I just brought Jesse.
Okay.
Because it was more economical. It was already so uneconomical to do that bringing two was just super uneconomical. And then I had two visual guys, and then we built a screen specifically for the tour. I bought projectors specifically for the tour. Like, we had like specific content, like visual content made just for that tour, and like I basically just dumped all the money from the tour back into the tour, and disregarded accommodation. So I was like, oh, that's all right, we'll just sleep in the van, we'll sleep on people's couches, we'll be fine.
Right.
Which was the dumbest thing, because it just burnt me out so hard. Which has now led to me being more like, I'm happy to just support Beats Antique on tours, get, you know, less of a fee, but you know, have a sleeping spot every night, and, you know, either on the bus or in a hotel, and not have to worry about driving. You know, just get like wake up at 11 a.m. at the venue. It's so much more low pressure, and, you know, not have to worry massively about promotion as well, like promoting the gig leading up to the gig. I still do promotion when I'm a support act, but it's not like that tour where I was literally every day thinking, how can I get people to the shows, you know?
Right.
Like
The responsibility is not on you to be the main promoter. Like it's not.
It shouldn't be, yeah, because I don't have my roots invested and ingrained in friggin' Madison, Wisconsin, you know? Like,
right.
Even though the show there did well, but like, I don't know how to promote there. Like the promoter should know how to promote there. Just like if I'm in Sydney, I can sell out a show in Sydney quite easily just because I know how to connect with people there.
Right.
Or in Denver, I feel like I know how to connect with people here because I've lived in both of these places. But you know, I don't know how to promote a show in Bangalore, India.
Right.
Like who do you even connect with to try and get people to come to that show? You know.
Right.
So yeah, like it consumed me for like 6 months, this tour. Both building the set, because the set, like I had a drummer, so I had to build the set linearly and then send him like clicks and stems and all sorts of stuff, and then have his signals sending back in, and then have MIDI from my controllers controlling the visuals. So when I would like hit my pad, it would trigger lights on the screen and all sorts of crazy stuff like that. And building this thing just consumed like 6 months of my life. And then all the promotion, all the building of the set, all the like conceptualizing of it. Then doing the actual tour consumed 2 to 3 months of my life, and then post tour like another month of just what the shit just happened for the last year, basically. So it consumed almost a year of my life, and the payoff was just not there. So I was like massively down about it. So I can understand like that. Like we were talking about in the car before, like the just winding it back hard on the touring, because it can definitely burn you out fast if you do it that way. And it sounds like you tried to do the same thing.
Oh yeah. I mean, I would scale it up and then scale it back, you know, like the easy way to do it is just solo with minimal gear. And you know, I rent my own car. I do my own flights, my own hotels, and then it's like I can predict as much of that as as it would be possible, because I was able to control all of that, you know. But when you start adding crew and transportation, and you know, you start playing bigger venues that have expectations, like they're going to give you, they're going to be upset if you don't hit this particular number. You know, the pressures all multiply and become way different thing than making music with your buddies, you know.
Yeah, it takes it to a level where it becomes like really work and really not inspiring, which is fine. I mean, like promoting your stuff and doing the social media game and all that crap these days is part of the job, and it's a trade that you have to make, I guess, to do the thing. But yeah, it can burn out if you do it and don't get rewarded, and then you start to get like salty, like why am I not getting rewarded, but this thing that I don't think is that good is, and like all you start going through these philosophical ideas of like what actually even has value, and like I'm at this like real nihilistic point, I feel like, just in general now from this whole experience over the last few years, where I'm just sort of like, well, I don't think anything has any intrinsic value. It's like, you know, the only thing that has value is when the thing hits the listener's ear, and then they apply their own value to it, and you just start to get into these weird like mindsets. Or I do anyway. Yeah,
you start to get hair splitting just the philosophy of how to keep your fire burning as a artist,
right?
You know, you try to mix that up with business, and then you travel like a maniac, and keep crazy hours and eat shitty food, and you know, surround yourself with fun chaos. There is a point where, you know, that it goes against the grain of that like music dream you had as a kid, or whatever got you started, that original pure flame of enthusiasm or whatever.
I have massive respect for people who can like take it all and just push straight through it and just keep going with it. It's crazy. But I mean, there's a lot of people I know who have been touring like definitely as hard as you or I, and had just this same shit experiences, but are just still stoked,
super positive about it. Like, and I think when I was younger, I was more into it. I mean, because you know, it's fun. You got to think those things are fun. And so if you're in a place where standing in someone's living room at 3:30 in the morning, like drinking beer and shouting is fun, then it's the life, you know. You're like, wow, this is amazing. But the minute you're like over that, and it took me a long time. I think that I kept that young party spirit going for a long time. I mean, maybe till I was 40.
Yeah.
But then it was just done. And then I started to be like, what am I doing? You know, I would totally like catch myself in the mirror, looking at myself, just being like, well, I have a hotel room and I'm an adult and I really need to go to bed because I'm not, you know, I'm like, I don't look good and I'm really, you know, and that's what tour did to me over the years. But I think that I still can relate to that spirit, and I would never want to dissuade. Like my son Jeremy is making music, and I mean, I would imagine that the thought of you and your friends driving around the country is just awesome, you know. And that, I mean, I would hope so.
It is for a while.
Yeah,
It definitely is, but it can burn you out.
I think there's probably stuff. I mean, what would you suggest?
I would
if
suggest,
you were if you were Jeremy starting at his age and you were going to redo this.
Yeah, if I was to do it again. I would say whatever fee you get for the show, if it's like under $1,000, basically, invest most of it into your quality of life on the road. Like that's where I went wrong. Is like whenever I started getting fees like $1,000, I was like, man, I got enough to do visual shows now. And it's like, no, man, you got to be getting paid to do visual shows, and you got to be getting paid to like start bringing your own production. $1,000 a show is not enough. Like that's enough to get a hotel.
Right.
That's
what the production costs
exactly.
Usually. Like if you do a big show, like, you know, even in just a regular big club show in Denver, like that's what production will cost.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah. So for me, if I had to take in, so like all cards on the table, the 35 show tour that I did, it may not have been 35. It might have been like 32 shows or something like that. But it was like,
it's a lot of shows.
It was a lot of shows, and it was a lot of shows in a row. It was like, I think 56 on days and maybe 12 off or something. So it was a lot. So basically, some fees were really low, like 200 to 500, and others were like, you know, up to the 1.5 to 2,000. But they all evened out to basically be like it was pretty much 1,000 a show. So the gross for the tour was about 32 to 35,000 from memory. So immediately, like 10% of that, like 3,200 to 3,500 goes to my manager, and 32 to 3,500 goes to my agent. So the gross is now down to like 27,000. And then I had to fly my friend over from Australia for the support, then pay for the projectors, which were like $3-4 grand, and then pay the visual guys on the road, which was I think I paid them $3,500 each for the entire tour, which is super cheap. But, so it was all, like I got everything for a really good price. I just didn't have enough money to do it. But what I really should have done is done no production, and the van that we had. Like what I should have done is I should have taken all of that money and invested it in hotels and like a driver, and I should have paid for things that made the quality of life on the road better, not the show better. The shows were awesome, and that's cool, but then they ended up not being awesome really, because like the people involved in doing the show all felt like shit. So it's like I was on stage some nights and I would just like explicitly tell the crowd that I'm really tired and don't really care about being at the show. Like I was just like, hey, I'm just tired. I'm just gonna do the set. And like I would explicitly tell the crowd that. And like you're not going to enjoy the set as a crowd if the guy on stage is telling you
No, that's a bummer for sure.
And I probably shouldn't have told him that in retrospect. But you go crazy on the road, you know, like you get so tired and so burnt out that you're just like, I just don't give a shit anymore. Like,
it's that groundhog effect, right? Where the groundhog day.
Every day you're like, it's
like the same.
Yeah, you're not looking at the crowd like they're real people. They're trying to like really enjoy you as an artist, and they're real fans. Like you're not looking at them that way. You're looking at it as like, this is just such a tough experience and all this bullshit. And I wouldn't have felt that way if I felt like I slept 8 hours a night and had somebody driving me to shows and all this sort of stuff.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're focused on the music and you focus on your well-being and you don't try to like do inhumane distances between shows.
It is inhumane.
Right?
It's not good.
Like 12, we can do it 12 hours. If we leave at 2, we'll get there by sound check. And like you do that twice on a tour and you'll hate everybody on your
We did one
band.
Run on the tour where we played we played Kelowna one night, you know, Kelowna, BC.
Yeah.
We played Calgary the next night, and then we played Winnipeg the night after. So we basically like played Kelowna, loaded out the show, which was like an entire Sprinter van. For those who know how big a Sprinter van is, the whole back was just completely full. Like you couldn't jam another guitar pick in there.
Right.
So it was like we jammed, like we finished the Kelowna show. I think our set finished at 2 a.m. Got the van loaded by 4, left, got to Calgary by like 1 p.m. the next day or something. I can't remember exactly how far that drive is. Maybe it's not that long, but we didn't sleep is the point.
Right.
And then loaded in the next show, then finished there at 2 a.m., loaded the van again, got out of Calgary by 4 p.m. And then the drive from Calgary to Winnipeg is the killer because it's like 12 hours. And so we didn't sleep that night either. And then we got to Winnipeg, loaded in the show again, and then finished by 2 and then loaded the thing back. And then we drove down to Minneapolis directly after that. So we basically didn't sleep for like 4 days or something like that on that particular stretch. And that was, so killer, man.
Right. You lose perspective while you're doing it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. You definitely do. You get to the point of like, why? Like, I would prefer to have no money at all and no fans just to not do this. Like, I would give all of it up to not do this thing.
Becomes an endurance,
It really
you
does.
know, an ordeal.
Yeah.
It's like this ordeal. Like, I'm putting myself through this ordeal. And the end of the 2012 tour I did with Opio, the last 2 weeks of it, we had lost our bus and we were driving a white rented van with all of our gear in it and doing all the driving ourselves. And it was just brutal. Like, I don't think everyone was bummed. Everyone was tired. The gigs didn't feel like they were worthwhile, you know, and all that. It's that simple amount of well-being, like you're saying, that makes a huge difference, you know. But it sucks because you want to go out there and compete with the tours and the shows that are exciting and that look really good, and those are expensive. And you know, there's a lot of acts on the road with a lot of production, and I think the audience is used to that level as the baseline.
Right.
So if you show up with just your music and you have like the old, you know, table and a lamp, I mean, for me, that's awesome because it's about the music, but it just seems very lost on modern concert goers. Like that's not enough. That's not enough. You know, that's
with LED walls and whatnot.
Well, yeah. I mean, I don't even know if it's a spoil because it's like, that's just how it is, you know, and the fact that that's what people do, but it does keeps it about that on a lot of levels.
Yeah.
And like you're saying, you know, you could have some empty sounding night that looks fabulous, and you know that the club's going to think that's a better thing they want to do business with that,
right?
Versus the music heads that didn't bring in enough people to really fill out the room, and it wasn't, you know, and so there's so much to it, and I know that feeling like of wanting to scale up, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You want to at some point. But I also think another thing that I notice goes through my head, and it doesn't go through my head anymore, is when my agent brings me a show, I look at the fee, I instantly reduce from that fee the amount that they take, and then I go, this is how much I have left. If I don't get a hotel, I can walk away with this much, right? Like that instantly goes through your head. It's like, how much can I make from the show if I like cut away shit? But that's not how you should be thinking at all. Right. Like you should definitely be thinking like, all right, this is how much I have left for a hotel, and you know, if you're walking away with nothing for the first 5 years of shows, that's fine. I mean, it's not fine, but it's like it's better to walk away with nothing for 5 years of shows and have a 20-year touring career than it is to make money for 5 years and then be burnt out. And you know.
Well, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, like, how do you do a sustainable career at this? I mean, I think that, you know, there's not a long enough track record to learn from the past that much, because I think this game has changed so much. Yeah. How does a young producer set themselves up for sustainability?
Yeah, well, I guess everybody has their own.
I guess that is different for everybody.
Yeah, everybody has their own arbitrary like outline of what success looks like. For me, success at the moment looks like, well, getting this mic sorted for starters.
Yeah.
But for me, my idea of success is to be able to basically, I like to wake up and I like to not have to answer to a boss. Like if I can not do that, then I'm successful in that regard. I like to write music a lot. So if I can have money in my bank account to pay rent and eat good food at home, then I'm successful.
Yeah.
To me, honestly, like playing a show to lots of people it's not success to me. Like to me, that's just to me, the things that show would bring would be success in other parts of my life. But to me, that's just a, not a byproduct, but like that's a precursor to the success.
Yeah.
Me. So it's playing the big show is the precursor to having the money in the bank account to sit at my house and write tunes and all that good stuff. So when you're not making money from shows anyway, you're just like, well, this isn't success.
Right.
like if I'm dumping all the money into other stuff, then
I appreciate my time and being able to use it to, be creative
right.
and play with my instruments and toys and make things and do. That's what I want to do. And it's funny how little of that you can do when your moneymaker is a mega touring operation.
A thing that keeps you away from doing that, right? Basically.
Yeah. By definition, it's the opposite stuff. It's logistics and it's, you have to be able to portability and everything needs to like pack up. And it's just this constant, like really hard work, physical work to just getting it to like baseline good, whereas, my dream as a creative person is to, and I've become much more of a homebody as I've gotten older, but is to like work on all kinds of different projects, and keep a bunch of different interesting things happening, but all local.
Right.
I think that's really hard economically because the model is all about selling tickets.
Well, I think these days the model is changing. Like I think the model these days for making money as an artist, you have a lot of these like streaming services and a lot of these revenue services. Like, do you know about Patreon, for instance? That's a thing where like if you're a content creator, for instance, like let's say I'm a content, well, I don't really use Patreon because I just set up my own network through my website and whatnot. But like if I were not in that position, I'd probably look into Patreon, and you can say like, I'm a SoundCloud creator and I want every time I put out a new song on SoundCloud, if you'd like to support me, give me $1 or something, or you could do the same with YouTube. You could be like, every time I'm a YouTube creator, every time I put out a video, give me $1, and if you get enough of these people, basically they're crowdfunding your content every time you make it. So if you make 5 videos a week and you have 100 people giving you $1 each every time you put out a piece of content, then that's $500 a week,
Right.
So Patreon's really cool like that. And I feel like there's a lot of little entrepreneurial weird things going on now where you don't necessarily have to be a touring musician to make it as a musician. You can definitely just be a content creator at home and people can stream that content and that can be the way that they enjoy you as an artist,
Right.
And there's a lot of people like that. And not only that, but then streaming revenue. Like you get streaming revenue from YouTube, if you get enough views, they pay you through Google AdSense. And then, obviously if you're getting enough plays on Spotify, you can get paid that way. And then I find these days the services that don't offer that, like SoundCloud, for instance, I guess SoundCloud Go offers that, but it's not the same. Those services are dying, and the ones that aren't supporting the artists are kind of going, fuck that, and just leaving that service and moving on to the ones that are. So I think now is like a better time than ever to if you're a creative person, to not do things that you don't enjoy and to try and push the things that you do enjoy, like creating content and whatnot.
Yeah, the streaming thing for me, it seems like super ideal because I'm at my musical best when I'm in my sweats in my studio. Back to that stage fright thing, I get it bad. And sometimes I'll get my hands will cramp when I'm playing guitar or bass. Like, have you ever had your jaw cramp or something like that?
Yeah,
that happens in my hand and it's crazy. And it doesn't happen to me in my life at any other time.
Just when you're
I'll be
bass?
on a stage and it's like the tension, it gets physically manifested and like I get muscle pain, the cramp, horrible kind of stuff. And like weird, like touring, I would just always have sweaty hands. And when I get home, it dries up.
Dude, I have so much respect for people who can go on stage and they just look and feel so comfortable. Like Jason Hahn is a good example. Like he's just so comfortable on stage, man.
He is
like,
very comfortable. He's just comfortable like that, I think, wherever he goes. He's like
he's
that at the
super,
airport. And,
he's super comfortable dude, just doesn't give a fuck.
Yeah.
I love that. Like I love seeing people like that. And I'm the same as you. I'm not like that at all. I'm like,
I mean, I wish I was so much more able to control that, you know?
Yeah.
Like it's the, like, I don't know whether I'm thinking about it or a lot of it has to do with like gear breaking, you know, or like the show stopping. Yeah. Like I don't trust that it's going as well as it is or something.
So I used to have a massive problem with that, but then I toured with this drummer, the guy who I did that tour with, who I'd love to do more tours with in the future because he's an awesome drummer and an awesome dude. And I was like, man, what if like the computer crashes and all this shit? And the computer did crash on a few shows. Actually, like maybe I think the computer probably crashed on maybe even 30% of the shows, like quite a lot of them. Because I was using a desktop PC on this tour, by the way.
Oh, wow.
Because I couldn't use use a laptop because I was doing too much processing and stuff. And every time he'd just be like, man, it's a computer. The audience doesn't understand that you're at the whim of technology sometimes fucking up. Then they've never used it. And they've never used a computer, basically, which is not true for anyone at this point. Everyone's used a computer. Everyone knows that they don't behave exactly how you want them to sometimes, and everyone knows like there is order in the chaos, but we're not all computer programmers who can understand that chaos and that order. So but
it's like, you know, it's like when my guitar string broke in the old days, you know, I could like fix it, and I knew I could change a string in like 4 minutes, and so it had a beginning, middle, and end, like my horror story. But when that pinwheel of death is spinning on,
you just don't know.
You're like, oh well, like, I might not start ever again, you know. Exactly, and like then it feels weird that you're even up there playing music from a computer and waving your hands around in the first place, you know, like when the music stops, it's really stupid. So like I would worry about that, and gave me sweaty palms. And then when I got off the road, like not a problem, like totally different level of anxiety on a daily basis. And it's worth it if you love the show you're doing. It's worth putting yourself through that, you know. But it's like if you ever get to a point where you don't see the light anymore, then that aspect is enough to, you know, like turn you off too.
Yeah, I think you made the right move to stop touring if that's the way you feel about it, for sure. I'm definitely, I can see myself getting there, but I definitely think that there's a few things I want to explore in the live realm of electronic music, especially with like Max for live. There's a lot of stuff that I've been thinking about recently for live stuff that has to do with conditional formatting, or I guess is it the best way to describe it. And what I mean by that is, like, let's say you're playing bass and I'm playing drums. I might change the time signature to 5/4, right? And then you have to change what you're doing to 5/4 too. And then if there's another guitarist there and you're playing, like, let's say you're the key keeper and you're playing in the key of G, then that guitarist then has to play in the key of G too, right? He can't just like play in another key, because then that will just be dumb. So what I've been toying around with Max for Live in Ableton, and I've been working with my friend Tom Cosm on some stuff, is when I select a clip in Ableton, like when I trigger a track, I want it to change a bunch of states for other stuff, like for my controllers. Like, so when I trigger like this track, it might like, there's like a little note window I have now where I can like input notes. So when I trigger the track, it comes up with notes and tells me what I should be doing during that track, for starters.
Okay.
And then it will say like, okay, you should be like scratching on this controller. And then when another clip triggers, it might trigger a MIDI clip as well. So when I trigger a clip, it can trigger like other MIDI clips and stuff like that. It can do like a bunch of
macro type stuff, like
essentially,
open up your notepad and start another clip
exactly,
and reset some or change a program on something or whatever. Yeah.
So by me triggering a clip, it sets a bunch of conditions in the set, and that's the thing I don't see anyone doing yet. So I think for electronic music, that's something that I think I still have to offer live. Yeah. And something I want to explore more with. And if I don't have shows to do, I'll never explore it, because I'll just be like, I might as well just explore production and music, which I also want to do, but definitely, I think pushing the boundary of what is possible with live electronic music is something that I would like to do. Because currently, as it stands, like DJing, not that there's anything bad about DJing, and I actually would love to learn how to DJ at one point. Because I don't know how to use CDJs or vinyl or anything like that. Like, I never touched it. Well, I have, but for like 5 minutes. But it's so conditional, you know, like for starters, if you have a vinyl record on this player, that's a condition. And
That's right.
And you can only play the tracks on that vinyl record.
Right.
So it's a pretty big condition.
Huge.
Then once you're playing that vinyl, what do you have? Like a 10 BPM range that you can go up or down?
Yeah, I mean, I've got these ones are exaggerated, so these ones are like 20, but the original, techniques
Well, that's
are like
still
12%.
that's still a 40 BPM conditional range that you can't exceed, basically. Right. So it's like you are limited to some huge conditions when you're DJing, you know, like then you can only go into tracks that are within that BPM range or that key. So that like whittles down your possibilities again. So I want to try and like use those conditions to open up other possibilities, I guess.
Right. That's cool.
So that's kind of where I'm at with electronic music performance, trying to branch it out to make it make more sense as you would a musician or a player, rather than a DJ.
Are you using that seabed still, or what's the keyboard that I've seen you use? It's got like
you're thinking of Spoonbill. He was using the C-board.
Oh, okay. You never had one? I thought I saw you playing like a keyboard solo at some point at a festival.
You might have, but I was using an Ohm 64 to do it. So there was like 64 buttons in the middle. And
you're using the pads?
Yeah.
Okay. I remembered seeing, I think it was like, it was some festival in California, and you were playing and you were doing like a live key solo, like you were doing your synth solo live, but you were doing that with little pads.
Yeah.
I was, I'm height deficient, so I couldn't see you at the table. It looked like one of those.
Yeah.
Is that what Spoonbill has? Does he have one of those? Those look cool.
No, he has the continuum boards. Okay. Yeah. But you're thinking of Serenity Gathering, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So that I'm using a different controller setup now, but that's what I was using at Serenity Gathering. But I'm using a Livid DS1 now. They went out of business, man. It's a shame.
They did?
Yeah. Well, Jay, I think his name's Jay, the founder. He got ALS, man.
Oh,
which is the worst.
I'm
man.
so sorry
bad.
to hear that. So that's why.
I think they stopped. Yeah. But yeah, ALS is terrible. It's like the way you die from it is you basically suffocate, I believe, because like so everything in your body stops working, all your muscles stop working, and then the last thing that stops working is your lungs and your throat and stuff. I guess so you choke from it basically, or stop breathing basically, which is it's a slow, shitty process. But we did a Gravitas release to raise money for it. I think for like the study of it. I think. Yeah. So yeah, I think that's why they stopped making controllers, which is a shame. Because their controllers, I think the Livid ones are some of the best in the world.
Really cool layout too,
I think Lauren still uses the Ohm 64s, right?
Well, he had some custom ones made by, what was a guy making a bunch of stuff with MIDI fighter type buttons?
DJ Tech Tools?
Yeah, but there's a guy that he was working with, I recognized his name, that was making the controllers that Lauren was using. And this was in 2012, so I'm not sure what he's doing with it now. But he was using those kind of MIDI fighter buttons. Oh God, what is that guy's name? Hopefully I'll remember before the end of the podcast, but they were custom, and he had two of everything.
Yeah. So yeah, he has like 2 computers and stuff, right? And all sorts So yeah, that's crazy. So that's the other 2 controllers I use. I use the Livid DS1, and then I use the MIDI Fighter 3D and the MIDI Fighter Twister.
MIDI Fighter is pretty cool stuff.
I like them, yeah. They're small, and they're very functional.
Yeah.
So there's like some apps that you can get for them, the MIDI Fighter utilities, and you can do so much stuff, man, like so much crazy little setup stuff. So if you tilt your controller this way, it changes it, and if you do some other stuff, like if you press a certain button, it can change the state of the entire controller and stuff like that. So it's like, for how small they are, they're super functional if you go deep with the button diving and the utility
and then making sure you remember all the programming that you did.
Well, that's why I have the notepad.
That's huge because a lot of people want to get a 64 ohm kind of a deal, exactly. And then they don't realize that in the heat of that moment when
to be intuitive,
and you're at the gig, you had a couple beers or something, and you're trying to go 8 in and 16 down, or it's not the same.
It has to be intuitive,
right?
Yeah, which is one main thing that I'm trying to do as well with this whole condition setting thing. It's like when I press the thing, I don't want to think about all those conditions. I just want them to happen because I want everything to be intuitive all the time. Speaking of beers, you, I think when we chatted at Serenity, you weren't drinking, right?
Yeah, I'm at 3.5 years now, almost 4 years.
You haven't drank in 3.5 years?
Not a sip.
Jesus.
I accidentally had 1 sip, and it was a total accident, and I was so disappointed. It was like a can that looked like a sparkling water type of drink.
Oh, no,
And it was one of those sparkling drinks.
No.
And I just went for a thirst quenching sip of it, and I realized it was alcohol. I was going around burning my throat. And I was like, damn it. It was just really crazy considering like how, I drank a lot when I drank, all the time, every day. So, going on 4 years now, that's something I've been really happy about. And has made that was a great choice.
Yeah, it's a huge deal. I got a calendar recently, and every day that I drink, I put a red star.
Mm-hmm.
And every day that I don't drink, I put a silver star. And then every day that I exercise, but I do drink, I put a green star. And then every day that I exercise and I don't drink, I put a gold star.
That's quite a system. So you've got quite you could read out your patterns.
And dude, my fucking calendar is just floods of red.
Yeah.
It's just drinking with no exercise. There's at least 15 days a month where I'll drink without exercise. And I'm looking at it I've only been doing this for 2 months, and looking at it, I'm like, man, I got to change something. Cause I always feel, for starters, I always feel guilty about drinking and not exercising, and just it definitely affects your mentality, and it definitely affects how far, your brain function, how well your brain is working, and it affects your health massively, especially if it's beer, which is what I mainly drink. It's a lot of carbs and a lot of calories. Tons
of calories.
Yeah.
It's like an instant diet if you give it a break for a second, it's crazy. I figured out I was saving 15,000 calories a month.
It's insane.
It's insane.
What were you drinking mostly?
Beer. I would drink 6 beers. That's easy at a gig. The music is a weird job where you're entertaining people. So when you get to work, they say, "Hey, what are you drinking tonight at work?"
Yeah, exactly.
And they fill a cooler full of, some extra for your entourage or whatever. And so I would have a beer at sound check, and then go do stuff, and then come back for another beer before my set, and then take 2 on stage, and then come back and have 1 or 2 more. 6-pack easy every day. And try to sneak a couple back to the hotel, and would often fall asleep with 1 half cracked on my bed stand in the hotel. Cause I was getting them free from the club or whatever. And I gained a lot of weight, and I have issues with being depressed anyway without alcohol. And so the hangovers themselves were starting to be so brutal because they were depressing. They weren't just painful. It was sort of what am I doing with my life? Oh my God. And just that was my default morning state. So I would smash that with coffee and go back at it. And then by 2 a.m, I'd be again, and I gained a lot of weight, and just, I would eat more garbage too.
It makes you do
right.
That, yeah.
I do the late night garbage eating thing, and I always needed to have a drink in my hand. And that was a really, really long time, 20 years of touring or whatever, 15 years.
Did you ever have an issue with cigarettes as well?
Yeah, I smoked cigarettes.
Did you give up cigarettes first and then alcohol later? Or?
I have had an on-off with cigarettes throughout my life, I started in high school and smoked through college, and then quit for 10 years and then went back to it.
Okay.
And kind of touring, I would just allow myself to smoke only when I was on tour and not when I would come home. Mm-hmm. It was just a crutch for the killing time or that stage fright thing, or go as well with alcohol or whatever, And so on off, but I haven't had a cigarette now in a couple of years. And at that point it wasn't a daily thing anyway, right. But I would not, that wouldn't happen again either. It's just something I consciously choose not to do.
Totally.
It's both of those addictions have lost all of their charm for me.
Yeah.
And so there was times when I would lust for a cigarette. Yeah. See someone smoking, be like, damn, that looks like a really good, I would just love to have 1 cigarette, And I think
which
just,
is not possible.
No, and it's not. And I'm not that, I would have 1 and then I would have a pack,
Exactly, yeah.
But I'm at this place where it's just gross.
Yeah. That's how I feel about smoking as well. I used to smoke 50 cigarettes a day, man.
Whoa.
I was rolling them in Australia. This is when I was 20, 21. And I was at university, and I would literally sit inside a small bedroom and just roll and chain smoke all day.
Wow.
And that was just my life. And I was just like, this is fine. Like, I had no issue with it. And then one day I was just kind of like, I feel extremely fucking unhealthy.
Yeah, totally.
And I took this pill called Chantix. I think, yeah. So I took this pill called Champix, where you just take the pill like twice a day and you continue smoking and whatnot. And then
it just grosses you out.
Yeah, it just grosses you out. And then ever since I stopped that once. And then I did that thing where I'm like, oh, I could just have like one cigarette. And then I just started smoking again, like maybe a year later. And then I just took Champix again and just killed the addiction again. And then I haven't gone back. And I don't think I ever will, because now I know that it's not possible for me to
dabble.
I can't dabble.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's how I stopped that. And I never got that feeling after I stopped that like I would see somebody and want one anyway. Like, it's just because while I was doing it, I hated it. It's like,
it's gross. Yeah.
It's kind of like there's two of me, and one of them is like trying to just fucking barrage the other and destroy the other, basically. So there's one of me that's going like, I know this is bad and I know I should stop and this is dumb. But then there's the other one of me that's like, just do it, just keep doing it. Like, yeah. So I know that side of me is wrong, and I know that the other one is correct.
Right.
So I just listen to that one. And I'm in the exact same position, I would say, right now with alcohol. Although it's affecting my life, or at least my health, I think a lot less than cigarettes were. But yeah, I'm definitely in that boat of like needing to stop drinking. And I think taking more breaks from touring and stuff will make that easier, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, I toured for 1 year without drinking, and it was super weird at first. I mean, I had never gone on stage without a drink.
Really?
So it was really weird to all of a sudden do that. And it was just really, the weird part was maybe just how clear it all was, that I could just kind of breathe and look in everyone's eyes for a second in the front row, and it was like overwhelming.
Yeah.
You know, whereas when it was a little blurrier, I could just kind of close my eyes and forget about everybody and get into my thing. Yeah. Whereas it was just really like that clarity. But I also feel like then those sets I played were precise.
Right.
And the transitions were way more, you know, they were flawless when they were sober. I was able to execute those, and I started to enjoy that aspect of getting more ninja powers as opposed to the drunken master style. You know, I started to go with a little, it's like, and it was like, you know, I kind of get myself all hyped up on stage, and any picture I've ever seen, I'm making like excruciating types of faces, and people are always like, dude, you look like you're freaking out up there. And I consciously tried for the last year to like relax and to not go into that place, but to just try to observe and not be so like, you know, not responding to the music as much, but like trying to be in control of the whole thing. And that was super helpful not to be drunk.
No, I actually in the last I would say 2 years have played maybe 80% of my shows sober. I just don't like playing drunk for the same sort of reasons. It becomes a blur, and you can't really enjoy the experience as much, especially if it's a really cool show. Like I just did 2 shows with Deadmau5 at Red Rocks.
Whoa.
And I like specifically didn't want to drink so I could like enjoy the experience. And I feel like if I had have drunk and that was a blurry experience for me, it wouldn't have been as nice. But I mean, fuck yeah, looking up at that amphitheater and like being clear and like trying to like, at the same time as trying to play the set, also talking to myself internally, being like, all right, let's just slow the shit down in the head and like try and control the situation.
I mean, that's the place of all the places to try to be present at your set.
Exactly.
You just opened for Deadmau5, huh?
Yeah.
Wow, cool. How did that come about?
So it's a weird story. Basically, he just followed. No, what happened? He posted a picture on Twitter of a hardware version of Serum.
Okay.
Which is the VST.
Yeah. Is there that?
I don't know. Like, I think it might have been Photoshopped.
Like, right.
But like, he posted this picture of like his huge, crazy studio, and then on the table was a hardware version of Serum, and everyone was freaking out. And I was like, I don't know if that's real, but I tweeted back to him saying, oh, it reminds me of this module, like a Eurorack module. And I know he's like a huge Eurorack module nerd as well. And there is a module that is pretty much Serum. Like it has envelopes in it. It has all this stuff. Like you can literally have this digital interface on your Eurorack, and it's really cool. And then you can take those envelopes elsewhere and process other modules with them and whatnot. Super cool module that was on Kickstarter, I believe. So people were like crowdfunding this thing to be built, and I don't know if it was built yet, but anyway, I posted that to him, and then he followed me. And I was like, oh, maybe, you know how some big artists have those like follow bots.
Just automatic stuff.
Yeah, like if you go to Bass Nectar's account, it's like he follows, I think, like 20,000 people or something like that.
Right.
And you're like, if he follows, it doesn't mean shit.
Right.
Like, so I went to his account and I'm like, wow, he only follows like 300 people. And he has like 4 million followers. So I was like, well, maybe he like intentionally followed me. So I, when somebody follows you on Twitter, you get the ability to message them.
Right.
So I sent him a message and I was like, hey man, thanks for the follow. Big fan of your stuff. Yeah, just thanks. And then he got back to me. He was like, dude, Mr. Bill, he's like, I remember you from like 10 years ago on like Shoutcast and shit and like all these like weird little production forums.
Because he's totally that guy. Like he loves geeking out. And
exactly. So, I mean, he got big, like he blew up in like 2008, right? Around then. And that was pretty much when I was just not starting. I'd started a few years before that. Like I maybe started in producing in 2005, 2006. So by that point, I was sort of like a little savvy, and I was always posting on forums like that, just being like, here's something I made, here's a rack I made for Ableton, here's a new trick I figured out, like just trying to, you know, engage with the communities there so I could get better at my own thing. And then that's kind of led into the YouTube thing and all of that stuff. So he remembered me from those forums basically. And he was like, you're this guy, right? And I was like, yeah, that's me. Like, that's crazy that you remember that. Like, he's such a big artist with so much going on, and he remembers this like interaction on a forum or something from 10 years ago. So I was like, yeah, like, cool, man. It's cool that you know me and awesome. And then I can't remember where the conversation went from there, but basically it ended up that he wanted to work on some stuff with me. And then I showed him my side project, Electricado. I don't know. Do you know that project?
No, I want to see it.
Yeah, so I have a side project called Electricado. It's like a house project. So I showed him that.
Which is like in his territory.
Yeah, exactly. And he was like, cool. And then he wanted to sign it to Mousetrap. So since then, we've signed an EP and a single to Mousetrap. And we got another EP coming out.
Oh, so you've already released on Mousetrap?
Yeah, a bunch of stuff.
Nice, man.
And then from that, he was like, do you want to open for me at Red Rocks? And I was, no, sorry. He said he was playing at Red Rocks. And I was like, cool. I live in Denver. Let's hang out. And then he was like, and then I was like, just jokingly, and if you need an opener, like, just hit me up. And then and he just messaged me one day. He was like, congratulations, you're my opener at Red Rocks. And I was like, sick.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, so I just just got a show at Red Rocks doing just from Twitter basically, which was.
Did he expect you to do your house music, or did you do Mr. Bill stuff?
No, I did Electricado. So the Mr. Bill thing has never played at Red Rocks. It's like just the side project actually, which I'm fine with. And then since then though, we did a collab, and the collab will be on his next album, but it's a Mr. Bill collab.
All right. Yeah. Very cool. So is he a cool dude?
Yeah, he's super cool dude. I hear a lot of mixed stories about him. Like whenever somebody's like, oh, I saw Deadmau5 hit you up on Twitter or whatever.
Yeah, he always gets in beefs with people on Twitter.
Yeah, and a lot of people are like, oh, I've heard these stories about him where he's like, you know, goes off the rails at somebody or whatever. But I haven't had this experience at all, man. Like he seems like a super nice guy, and like the only thing I can think of when I've spoken to him is like, this dude is so inordinately huge to a level that me or you would probably never understand, because he's just so rich and so famous, to like this insane, like very, very, very few percentage of artists get to his level, you know, like, like there's a couple I can name off the top of my head, like maybe Skrillex, Bass Nectar, him, you know, maybe Tiesto. Like there's very few artists that are in that echelon of huge. And he's sat there before for like 4 hours on Skype just chatting with me. I'm like, how is this guy, like, who's obviously insanely busy and doing all this crazy shit, have this amount of empathy for like a smaller artist and have this amount of time, which I think is crazy respectable, honestly. So I've had the opposite experience to what people usually talk of him. Well, the interesting thing about the Mousetrap thing is, now that I'm doing this Electricado thing, I am doing a lot of shows where people don't know me, but because of the style, there's a lot of like built-in crowds, you know. So like, I'll do like beta. I'm doing beta and like March, and I'm sure no one there will know me, but I'm sure it'll be packed as well, you know. So it's kind of, but you can't really get on the mic during a house set because it just doesn't. It's not the. It's not
the thing. Yeah,
you can get on the mic during like a OPO style set or like a Vibesquad or Mr. Bill style set, because it's like break heavy, glitchy shit. And like, it kind of lends itself more to, you know, some actual interaction and stuff. But when you're playing house, it's literally all about the fucking trancey vibe almost. Like, it's not trance, but it's about that vibe, you know, where people are just like locking into that thing for like an hour and a half or whatever. And any mic action just like breaks them out of that trance, you know,
Right.
and that destroys the experience. And then you have to work really hard to get them back into that trance again. So
Totally. Yeah, talking. Mics are dangerous things.
yeah,
You know.
I agree.
Yeah. All right, man. Speaking of mics are dangerous things, thanks for hanging with us.
Yeah, man. Pleasure.
Thanks for coming out, Mr. Bill.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the first podcast, man.
Yeah, it's been an honor.
Yeah, so actually, I think this might be I think this is the first podcast I've done like this
Cool.
ever. Yeah, so this is a good experience for me too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.